We find in Matthew chapter 4 an account that's also found in Luke chapter 4. Two of the Gospels talk about what we call the temptation of Jesus. What's interesting about Matthew chapter 4 is when this happened and how it happened. And I believe that there's some lessons in this passage about how to be stronger in our weakness. I'm going to begin reading in verse 1 of Matthew chapter 4. It says, "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, command these stones to be loaves of bread.' But he answered, 'It is written, man shall not live by bread alone.'" Word of the Lord. Let me start off by, if you're taking notes, write this down. I believe that God is going to speak to some people today. I think this message some of you very much need to hear, because as you go into this season, it's important to understand how to be strong when you are weak. Number one, lesson we learn from Jesus. Listen, eat the word. Lean into the word for strength and spiritual nutrition. It says, "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil." I want to talk, first of all, before we get into the first temptation, I want to talk about when the temptation occurred and who led Jesus into the temptation. Now, if you read the verses prior to this in Matthew chapter 3, you will discover that Jesus just went through one of the most iconic experiences of his life. His second cousin, John the Baptizer, had invited him into the waters, and Jesus had come into the waters, and John said, "I can't baptize you, you need to baptize me." And Jesus said, "Go ahead with it." And the Bible tells us that Jesus went down into the waters of baptism. When he came out of the waters of baptism, a dove descended upon him, indicating the Holy Spirit upon him, and a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son in whom I am well pleased." I mean, this was the pinnacle of Jesus' experience up until that point. For 30 years, Jesus had lived pretty much incognito. He was the son of Joseph the carpenter, Mary. Few people knew that he was the Messiah. He was 30 years old and basically had done almost no miracle at all. He was 30 years old and very few people knew who he was. He was living under the radar, and then the time came at the age of 30 where he got baptized, and it was the coming out into ministry. It was the public declaration, "I'm ready to start my ministry." The heavens open up, a voice from heaven, the dove comes down, and immediately he's tested. Who here got baptized in the last 3 months? You got baptized. Raise your hand. Come on, wave at me. Wave at me. You know, we had about 50 people baptized in December. Church-wide, we had close to, I'm told, 400 people get baptized. God is doing a work in this place. But can I tell you, get ready. If you were baptized, for some of you, the greatest testing of your life comes after you have become public about your decision to follow Jesus. Because what the enemy knows is that now is the time to try to get you. Now is the time to try to discourage you. You just declared to the world, "I am a follower of Jesus." And sometimes it's right on the heels of our greatest declaration that our deepest temptation comes. Now, I want you to notice this. It says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted." Who led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted? Anytime in the Bible you see capital S, you know it's the Holy Spirit. Jesus was led by the Spirit of God into the wilderness to be tempted, his most severe tempting. God sometimes is the one that will lead you to the place of temptation. Sometimes it's the Spirit of God that will guide you to your time of greatest temptation. Now, hear me well. God never tempts you to evil. James tells us that God cannot be tempted by evil, neither does he tempt anyone towards evil. You can find that in James chapter 1, verse 13. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Don't ever say, well, God put this temptation. No, that wasn't God. Pastor, I was just standing there, and this girl in this mini skirt walks by. God put her in there beside me. She gave me a look, batted her eyes. No, that wasn't God. Not God, sorry. God does not tempt anybody to evil because God has no evil, and he's not trying to lure you into evil. However, the Holy Spirit may lead you to a place where you are tempted. The Holy Spirit may lead you to a season in which he allows you to be tested, because we grow through testing, and it's in the midst of our testing that our faith is proven, and we grow and stretch, and when we overcome, we are stronger because of it. But God is never the one to tempt us to evil, but he can lead us to a place where we're tempted by evil.